Today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in the new Isle of Skye expansion, Journeyman. This is an expansion that I very recently got, and also you may not know this if you're watching this in the future, I'm going to do extra videos over the next few weeks because I played so many new games at Geekway that I need to catch up, and I'm still playing new games. This was not a Geekway game that I played, this was a game night game that I played the other night. Also, a weird thing about this expansion is it really is brand new in the US. There's only like one or two other videos out there about it at all that I know in English. And so I'm going to maybe talk a little bit more about how to play this expansion than I normally would, because that information just really isn't out there. So one of the crazy things about this expansion, actually first I should mention, Isle of Skye is one of my favorite games. Top 5 game right now, definitely. I absolutely love it. For me, it is a 45 minutes, sometimes up to an hour, but usually about 45-minute game that just has a ton of interesting decisions. I love it in that space, that 45-minute space. And I love the price setting, the I cut you choose elements of Isle of Skye. And the expansion, the crazy thing this thing does is it maintains the feel of Isle of Skye, but it fits it into a completely different notch on my shelf, essentially, because it turns it into, what's the playing time it says on here? It says that it is now, where does it say the playing time? I think I can't find it now, but it like readily admitted somewhere, I can't find it, that this is no longer a 45-minute game. This is now like a 90-minute game. We played it last night, a learning game. We started at, what, 8:30? No, a little after 8. And we ended at almost 10. So learning game was almost 2 hours. That's a huge difference, 45-minute game to a much more substantial game. That doesn't make it a bad thing, though. It's really interesting that now I have this game that I can play as a 45-minute game, or I can play as like the meaty event game of game night. The reason this happens in this expansion, the reason it's so much more substantial now, despite all the awesome, interesting choices in the base game, is this mat that each player gets. And you might see this right away and have maybe the reaction I did, which was, as much as I love tracks in games, this looks crazy. How am I going to absorb all this information in the game? It's so much. It's a crazy track. Look at that. But the good news is a lot of these symbols are very intuitive, and almost all the symbols are intuitive. Basically, what you're doing is you play a normal game of Isle of Skye. Every round is essentially the same, except for one key difference. And there are some new Endgame tiles, there are some new normal tiles, some land tiles that you put in there. But at the end of the tile placement phase, you will map out the route of your Journeyman, which is essentially, what do they call it here in the rules? They say, okay, they essentially say that you are the king and you're walking around your kingdom, seeing how things are going. And you're trying to walk to certain waypoints. So as you walk around, or before you even walk around, you're going to put down these tokens on your kingdom, on your tiles. And then you can walk around on tiles that do or do not have those tokens. You're just walking around. But whenever you get to one of those tokens, you have the ability to advance on a track. So for example, say I have on this track, I have a cube here. And on my board, on my map that I'm building, my kingdom I'm building, I move my Journeyman onto a tile that has a waypoint token on a tile that has the barrels, the whiskey barrels. If I do that, I pick up that token and I advance the token, the progress token, onto the track. So that's all these are. These are certain things that you're trying to see along the way during your journey. Some of them take a little bit of an explanation, but most of them are pretty simple to understand. This adds a huge range of choices to the game. Normally in Isle of Skye, you were deciding between, you're kind of gauging how much money you have, you're looking at the different tiles out there, as compared to what you have in your kingdom and the endgame points in your kingdom, and also in relation to the scoring tiles that you're activating that round. But this adds a ton more information, and each track does different things. Like this top track gives you residual victory points. The middle track gives you residual money, and it increases the movement of your Journeyman. And this bottom track also gives you residual victory points, It also gives you victory points as you advance it. So it's not just residual, but as you advance it. Pretty substantial addition here, as you can tell. I won't go into too many more details about it. You can probably download the rules and see it if you're curious. But it really increases that decision space, which was a bit of a brain burn the first time we played, but we're all looking forward to playing it again. Now, this does a few interesting things. My favorite game mechanisms. Let's finally get to that. So, two things that I want to mention. One, in the base game of Isle of Skye, and I think in other games like this, but especially in Isle of Skye, when someone buys your tile, so you put out these 3 tiles, and one gets axed right away. So you have 2 out that other players can buy. And if they don't buy any of them, you get to keep those tiles and add them to your kingdom, and you just pay the money that you put next to them, the price. You just pay that to the bank. But if another player buys one of those tiles, they give you the money, you keep the money that you put out next to that tile, and they get the tile. You don't get the tile. You get some money, which is a nice compensation. But in general in Isle of Skye, you want the tiles. You want the tiles in your kingdom. I think it's balanced well in Isle of Skye, but the expansion does something really cool in that it's this double-sided because it's 2 to 4 players and 5 players on this side, which was what we played on. If someone buys one of your tiles, you automatically get to advance the progress token on this top track. That's it. So you get the money that you normally get, and you get a free advancement on this track, which is awesome. It's huge. It feels actually really good to get that now. It doesn't feel like a slight punishment if someone buys your tile. It feels really good to advance on this track, and it adds to the pricing decisions in the game too, because now it's not just automatic that you want to always really max out that price, either to discourage other players from buying it or to maximize the amount of money you want to get, because now you're factoring in, well, maybe I should price it a little bit lower so that so someone picks my tiles. Maybe I actually want a player to pick my tile to advance on this track. That definitely happened in our first game. A few of us were really trying to move up on this track to get the 10 victory point residual down here, or even the 7. And so we were pricing our tiles really low so other players would buy it. That's a huge change to the game. I really, really enjoyed that. The other thing that this game adds, or this expansion adds, that's really, really cool, that I want to explore in my next play, because in my first play, I guess it's essentially, I wasn't making, there's too many decisions to make, there's too much information, and so I was pretty much waiting until I bought tiles to make decisions about where my wayfarer, where my journeyman was going to move, and where I was going to drop my waypoint markers. So I was just trying to get at least 2 advancements per turn, but I was just doing it based on what I got. In the future, I really want to get better at focusing on buying certain tiles to advance on specific tracks, not just for the track benefits, which are cool, and I'm sure I can make decisions based off of them, but once you get to level 3, see that Roman numeral 3, and there's one down there, and there's one down here, down at the bottom? At the beginning of the game, you're going to seed those slots, as well as the number 1 and 2 slots, 1 and 2. You're going to seed them with random tiles. And the 1 and the 2 slots are good. They're nice bonuses. The 3 slots are huge. They're huge bonuses that you get if your journeyman reaches, where's the one over here? If your journeyman reaches those spots. Ignore the sheep isn't important. Remember, you're just trying to get the journeyman to a tile with a waypoint marker that has a sheep on the tile. If you do that, you get the tile that's right here, the little bonus tile. The 3 tiles that you can get are 1, from now on, whenever you buy a tile from another player, the bank pays the money instead of you. That's huge. That's huge. So even if another player, in our game, a player priced something at $16, nobody had $16, but if the bank can pay that, that player is still rewarded because they get the money and you don't have to pay anything. So it makes any tile accessible to you. That's huge. Number 2 is you can buy 2 tiles from other players. So everyone buys it, goes around and buys a tile, and then there's another bonus round of buying for anyone who has that bonus tile. 2 tiles is huge. The last one is you don't have to axe any tiles. So normally you put out 3 tiles every round and you axe one of them, you get rid of one of them. Now in Journeyman, you with that tile, you don't axe any of them. So you have the potential, you not only have the potential of pricing out 3 tiles and maybe have players buying them, but you also have the potential of getting those tiles, the greater chance that you'll get those tiles and get to place them in your kingdom. Those bonus tiles, as you can tell, are so hugely powerful that they're worth catering your strategy around them and planning ahead to get them. So not just advancing on the tracks that you can just because of the tiles you've got, but really mapping it out and saying, I really want to get that tile that lets me have the bank pay for other players' tiles, and I want to get that as soon as possible. I want to try to get that in round, I think the earliest you could probably get it is round 4, but maybe round 3 if you really push it. It's going to be difficult, but I think it might be possible. Get that as early as possible so that you can use it several times before the game ends. That's huge. That's huge. I love having stuff like that, endgame bonuses or goals that you can really steer your strategy towards from the beginning of the game. Anyway, I've talked now for 10 minutes about this expansion, way too long, but as brain-burny as it was, as the first play was, I am really excited to play this again now that I can kind of parse this information a little bit better. And as soon as this gets out there in the wild to everybody else, I got it from local game stores, so I know it's out there for purchase. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you have if anything I've talked about today inspires you to share other mechanisms in games that do these types of things, I'd love to hear about that in the comments as well. Thanks.